Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. So in this particular video, we want our posts categories, the selected categories, to actually show here and be ticked when they are ticked, right? So here on this particular post, there are two categories that are selected, food and electronics, but we can't see them here because we don't already have code to do that. So what I'm going to do is we are back here, continuation from our previous video. We are back inside the models. This is the basic posts plugin and models categories map. So in here, I want to create a function that actually reads data. The data we need is, now there are two ways to read this data. So let me explain a little bit. Now, in the first instance, all I need to know is the IDs of the categories in order to be able to tick these, right? Just the IDs. But when we are viewing posts as an entirety like this in a list, we need to be able to name the actual categories by name. So that means I would need to grab the category details themselves from here. So we need two functions for that. One that shows details, one that just grabs the IDs. Depending on the situation you are dealing with, you can choose which of the two functions to use to grab that data. So let me just duplicate one of these here. Yeah, so let's say get category IDs, okay? The other one can be get category rows. So one grabs the rows, the other one just the IDs. So all we need to know is the post ID, that is all. So just like that. And this returns, both of these return arrays. So you can do that to show the return value. Okie dokie. So in both cases, if none of the things work, we should be able to return an empty array. That way we don't return false if we don't get a result, right? It's easier to deal with if you know that the return is always an array, and of course here we are specifying that the return value is always an array. So there's that as well. Now what we'll do is let's grab some rows and say is equal to this. So we're going to use the where function because it returns multiple values. And here we are looking at where the post ID is equal to this particular post ID. Just as simple as that. Now, if this returns a result, we'll say if rows like that, okay, then we're going to return now this returns the rows of the categories map table. And as you can see here, where the post IDs is very specific, we have category IDs here, but it's going to return the rows of the entire data here. The only thing we need is just this column here, the category ID column, right? So in order to do that, we're going to use a function called array column, which is aptly named. So the input is rows, and which column key do we want to get is category ID, like that. All right, cool. So either if things work out, we return the array column. If not, we return an empty array. So I'm going to copy this and put it here and make a few changes. First of all, I'll put my braces here because I'll have more than one line here. So where we return rows in this situation, this will be different. So in this case, we're just going to run a query. Actually, I don't need those braces at all. Let's run a query instead. So in this case, we will do this. Post ID is required, of course, but let's put a query here. And the query is going to read something like select all. No, not all. We just want the category ID from this table. Okay, so select category ID from this table where the post ID is equal to post ID. Okay, so this is going to return exactly what we're doing in the where clause here, right? But this time the reason I'm running an actual query is because then I want to use the result of this to actually read from the categories table itself. So I'm going to put these inside query curly braces and then run another query outside this query. Say select all from categories. Select all from categories. Now I'm assuming that that is the categories table. Where is this? Inside plugin.php, there's a post table, right? Now we need the categories table as well here. So what do we call the categories table actually? It's called categories. But that could change. So we need to put it in such a way that it's easy to change. So categories table right there. So in order to get this, I can grab the tables from this, right? Categories table. So I can use this anywhere in my plugin by doing that, right? Tables is equal to get value tables, but I want a very specific table. That is the categories table. Like so. So I'll just shortcut it to cuts table like that. All right, so instead of this, I can just say that, right? Select from cuts table where, so this is just future-proofing your plugin. In case for some reason you change your categories table, you only need to change it in your plugin.php over here and everything else will update, which is how it should work to make things easier. So selector from categories where, now those are category IDs, right? Where ID in, and then we will put it in there. Now for the in to work, you just need to return one column. So if you put a star here and say select, oh, this won't work. You just need to give it one column. That's what it will use to compare the IDs, and it will return that result. And if it does, goody. If not, nada. Okay, good. I think that actually does it. So let's see, get category IDs or get category rows. So let's start with get category IDs. We know that's gonna work. So I'm gonna go to the edit view side because I want to get, so there are these categories that are, this one loads all the categories that exist. Now what we need to do is make sure that if one of them is in a particular array, then we check it. So here I'll do this. Now, of course, it's not a very good practice to put more PHP code here in the view file. You could just do this in the plugin.php because they're all included anyway. But we can still do this. There's no rule against it. It's just not very good for updating. In case I need to change this view in future, it's going to be a bit harder if there's a lot of PHP. Okay, so get category IDs is the function, and we're supposed to give it the post ID, right? So where is our post ID anyway? This is in the edit. Let's see on plugin.php, how are we handling this? It's ID actually, that's what it's called, ID. Okay, so it's actually just called ID. So I'm just going to put that here. I'll say cut IDs is equal to. Now this is just the function of this class. So I have to instantiate this class. So let me make sure this class is actually instantiated before I try to do anything here. Apparently not. So, where actually am I instantiating this? Is it only in the controllers? Yeah. Only here in the controllers. But let's change that. We could just instantiate it here in the view. So where I'm instantiating these things, I could as well do that. Now maybe it would be better to actually name it appropriately, because it's easy for things to get lost in translation. Then I'll go to the edit view. That way I can use that here and do that. It's better to name it in full because I'm not instantiating it from this particular file. So it may be difficult to know what CM is and where it's coming from in future if I'm not instantiating it from here. Or I could just grab the instantiation part from here and put it just above this. That's another option as well. Now we have cut IDs here, which is nice. So the IDs are in here. So all we have to do is check if our ID, the category ID, is available in that in array. So here, if we say checked like this, if I just put the text checked like that, it means everything will be checked. So if I refresh, you'll see everything is checked. That's not good. So we should put a condition here and say something like, so we are echoing the word checked like that using PHP, but it may be good to leave some spaces. But let's put a condition here and say, I'll put it in brackets so you don't have to. I'll say in array. Okay, what are we looking for? That's the need. It's the category ID. So I'm gonna say category dash underscore, it's not underscore, it's like that, ID. And then what's the haystack? It's the array we are checking in, and it's the cuts IDs. So if that's true, let's put a question mark here to tell it this is an if statement. Then we'll put full colon there and just not echo anything if it isn't. So just by doing that, we should be able to get the correct ones. And as you can see, these two are ticked, this one isn't. And yeah, that actually works. So let's see and disable one like food. So we leave electronics and see if that actually works as well. So I'm gonna click save. And we can't see it here, but if we click edit, that was not disabled. So that is a problem. So let me hit save again, just to be sure. Let's go edit, and there it is. So let's try and add clothing to the list. Let's see if adding is not a problem. So let's edit. So adding clearly isn't a problem. The problem is removing. And this means the disable function isn't working. So if I go to categories, there's disable all. This is the function that isn't working. So query disable set disabled is equal to 1, where post ID is equal to post ID. Okay, so what I want to do is in the edit controller here, just after we disable everything, this is where I want us to exit and just say die. Actually, no. Let me just mute this one that saves the new ones. So I'm just going to disable these two and let's hit save. So let's go ahead and check to see what has happened. It doesn't look like anything was, oh, they were all disabled. That's nice. So it actually works. It actually works. So back, let's undo this. Now there's a very particular reason why it's not reflecting here, but let me do this. Let me undo these two and let's hit save. All right. Let's go back to edit. So it didn't do anything, but if we check in the table, you see that it actually did things correctly. This one is the only one that's active, the other two are not. But the problem is that the functions that are reading from here do not have they're missing the disabled part. So here I'm going to put a comma and say disabled must also be equal to 0 for this to be considered. So once I do that, then we should have the correct result. And as you can see, electronics is the only one that's ticked. Very good. So we need to do that here as well. So here I'm going to go here where post ID is equal to post ID and disabled should be equal to 0. Cool. That fixes everything, doesn't it? Now we just need to be able to read get category rows here from the list view. So I'm going to go back to plugin.php. Because we are instantiating categories map from here, it means we can actually do things in the list view, which is right here. So on the list view here, I can now grab categories. Now the issue here is that these categories are per post, so which means we have to go into the loop. Or another alternative we could do is we use the after query part here because we're actually grabbing stuff here. We can put a user role the same way we put user role. We can put some user categories role, right? So what I'll do here is this. Let me duplicate this. Oops, oopsie daisy. Control Shift D. So instead of user, let's do category rows. Now categories here is not something we know, so what I'm gonna do is let's go to the edit side here. Wait, inside here, right? Yeah, that right there, that's what I wanted. So back to plugin.php. I want this here. Boom. Yeah, some of these things should not be in the loop to avoid repetition. And back again to plugin.php. So I want to have the cuts table here instead of this text. So actually, you know, why am I doing this? I should instantiate the categories map instead. I'm going all about this wrong. So what I need is to do this, right? Copy that. Let's go to the after query and let's put that. I don't need to, yeah, this already has the needed data. So what I'll do is come categories map, new, and inside here there's this category rows. That's the one I want to get. So now this is looping per post, right? One post at a time. So for each post it has different categories. So what I want is to say category rows should be equal to, let me put this here like so. Now we need the post ID. So post ID would be inside row ID like that, okay? But instead of DB here, we're going to replace that with categories map. So let me make sure that we're checking if it's correct. And then inside here, categories, category rows. If category rows, then let's do that, and let's do that. All right, so that we have the rows in there. Hopefully this is making sense. We loop through each post, and in there we're just grabbing get category rows based on that particular post ID. And if that is correct, if it returns a result, then we actually save it as part of the row. So the same way we are doing with user row here. Okay, so let's just make sure this is working. If I go to list view, and there's a category before date created. So where is date created? It's here. Right here. Instead of rows, we should have categories. So category rows, that's what it's called, right? So instead of row here, it's going to be cat. Row as cat. We're just trying to name them a little bit better. Now, cat is a row, so it's an object. So we need to actually grab a column from there. So cat category, like that. Alrighty then, so that's for the list view. Let's go back here and categories, and it's not showing anything. Okay, so let's verify everything. So there's row, category rows. Let me make sure that's what it's named in plugin. It's category rows. That's what it's named. So let's make sure of that. Seems about right. So if not empty, then we loop through and grab that data. So why isn't this working? Let me just make sure. Okay. Now, one way to try and see where the problem is you can just echo out the contents of your rows. So I'm going to go down here, up here actually, right about just before we show the view file. And I'm going to grab rows. Wait a minute, get posts, right? Let me make sure it's get posts. Oh, it is. So let's see what we got there. So this is what we got. The row has a user row, but it doesn't have a categories row. So something is not giving here. How do we find that out? So something isn't working. Most likely it's this function here. It's not returning anything, because if it did, we would actually put it there. So there's something wrong here. So let me come back here, get category rows. So cuts table is this one. Rows is equal to select all from cuts table where ID in. Okay, there are two queries here, right? So I just want to know if one of them is working at least. So I'm going to remove the other query temporal. Let it just return results for this other one. Okay, so I'm going to save that. Let's see what happens. Okay, good. So the fact that we have an error here means it actually did return some results. They're just not the results we want. So that's cool. So let's put it back, undo. So we know this query in here is fine. The query, the problem is this one. So select all from cuts table where ID. Let me go to the categories table though. Let's see what we got. Yeah, there's just an ID there and it should work. Also disabled should be 0. And ID in. Okay. So why isn't it working? Okay, so let me grab this and just say where disabled is equal to 0. I'm just going to run that simple query and see if that will return some results. And it doesn't. So that's where the problem is. So this query over here has a problem. So select all from CATS table is a problem. So it's very possible that CATS table is something we are not expecting. So let me copy this and I'm going to do dd and say table like that and concatenate CATS table. I just want to see what it says about that table. What is it? So table categories, which is correct. So what is the problem? Table categories, that is correct, right? You know, errors can drive you insane sometimes. Whew. Okay, deep breaths, deep breaths. Select all from CATS table. So this by itself should return results, right? As simple as that. Select all from CATS table. Oh, because there's post ID here. That's why it doesn't return anything. Interesting. If I remove that, I bet it would. So let's try this. It isn't though. Back to plugin.php here. I want to show the row again, just to be sure. User row, yeah. It doesn't. Why? This is crazy. Right. Oh boy, you know, I went to all this trouble forgetting that I put this here. See, this is why coding can drive you insane. You know, I'm trying to get array column from the table where that column doesn't exist. There's no category ID in this one. So I'm just supposed to return the entire row set. All right, guys, so this should work now. And there it is. It says electronics. It's working finally. Let's remove that there so that we can see things in all their glory. So electronics. So let's try and add more. Let's try food as well. Save. So instead of creating a new record, it's just going to enable the old one. That at least makes it efficient. So as you can see, food, electronics, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so categories are working as intended. So this is the same tech we should move to the posts, to the pages side as well, so that we can select categories there as well. And then once we do that, then we can match posts and pages. Because currently, we don't know how to match those two. I want posts to be showing on particular pages. And we're going to do that in the next video.